Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Record Breakers. It's a music podcast where a group of friends get together, hang out, talk about music, share albums with each other, an album at a time. I'm here. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got Brett.
Pain don't hurt.
Yeah. We've got Drew.
China don't care.
Yes. And so we don't have Patrick because we don't have Patrick as he's going to be taking a bit of a sabbatical from podcasting, kind of taking a bit of a break. But in the meantime, we've got a new friend, an old friend, a friend everywhere in between. We've got DJM, heretofore known as David or Deej. How you doing, Deej?
Am I Robert Trujillo or Jason Newsted now that I'm here?
Well, I mean,
Again,
Patrick didn't die, so...
Yeah, I said on Twitter, one of them's dead, and one of them could still come back for reunion tours.
One of them's dead,
inside.
and one... Hey, he's not dead. And also, he's the one we beat up on most.
All right, cool. So I'm Robert Trujillo. I'm cool with that. That's cool. Infectious Grooves. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Thank you, Petey, Brett, Drew. I'm here and I'm ready to talk music with you guys.
Yes.
Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, so there's David. Now we're here to talk about music. Obviously this is the first episode in the cycle, so it's my turn. It's my turn, my time in the circuit. So I brought an album, a little bit of a nostalgia for the little that I get nostalgic about. But a really cool album that kind of takes me back to my early college days, my community college days. An album from that era is kind of like what you would call emo music scene.
Yes,
band.
you would. You would call this
would
emo
you?
music.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is emo. Okay.
Yes,
All
this
right.
is emo.
Okay. This is emo. All right.
It is emotional music.
Yes. It's a band by the name of Saves the Day. And an album by the name of Stay What You Are. It's a really cool album. Let's talk about expectations. I'll start with Brett. Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, I just found this Lisa Frank notepad. I'm going to use that from now on. But no, my expectations, the only time I've ever heard about this album or any song off of this album was in 2006. I was in a car full of women singing at the top of their lungs. And I was like, I didn't know the name of the band at all. I honestly never wanted to hear the song again after that night. But it was definitely
Was it at your funeral? I feel like it was at your funeral.
Well, what else do you think that a bunch of women would scream at the top of their lungs with the windows rolled down and me sitting in the back seat of like a 3-seat vehicle? Yeah, it was kind of an event. It was a long time ago too. So I was kind of interested to see what the hell? Let's look at this way after this was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
It's kind of unfair for me to say expectations. I love Saves the Day, and I think this is there are 3 albums I point to that are Saves the Day's greatest, and this is probably the top one. So
Yes. So
I had
fair
very
to say
high
you're
expectations because I sort of knew what I was getting into.
fair to say you enjoy it. David, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, to say that I had any kind of expectations would be a complete fabrication. I had 0. The most that I've ever heard of emo or bands like this would be on the college radio station, WHFR in Dearborn, that would be on the last few minutes before I would listen to Radio Apocalypse, the death metal and black metal show. So in comparison, the little emo that I'd ever heard really did not register with me very much. So when you guys mentioned at the beginning of the show that this was an emo band, it was like, oh, okay, this takes me back to something that is kind of a blip on my radar maybe once, but I knew people in my high school that enjoyed this
Yes.
kind of music.
Yes. Quite a few people in high school or early college around that time were into this. And for quite a few different reasons. Musically, it is, it's listed like Wikipedia states their genres as emo, pop punk, and post punk. It is meant to be like, compared to some emo, because this is going to fit into more of the peppy, punky pop influence, but aside of the emo that is more like was meant to be kind of like connected to pop punk in a little bit, but catchy. Some of those bands. This is less of the messy side of emo. Less, this is they didn't have a screamer. They didn't have a designated screamer in this band. Unlike unlike the non-zero and multiple bands that had a singer and a screamer around this time. So
Thought
this
about
is
bringing one of them before.
No.
From Autumn to Ashes was cool.
I've listened to a few of those bands.
Fugazi is an emo band, right?
Yeah, Minor Threat.
Minor Threat.
Emo band.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
Proto
Yeah.
emo. It's called proto emo.
No, they're just motion.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, it's super fun, super catchy, kind of like up tempo a little bit, but it is emo, and they do sing about emotional lyrics. They do sing about emotional things in certain ways, but I think overall it's just like kind of a fun, catchy record. I'm not as good obviously as describing music as a couple of the other guys, but Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
I mean, if music has emotion to become emo music, like Hot for Teacher there's tons of emotion in that. So, and jump splits. But no, this is I'm going to try and I'm going to actually speak my mind
There's
here.
an emotion in
Yes.
Hot for Teacher. The motion starts with an H and ends in Orny. So let's roll.
Okay. So
I thought it was just about a really intuitive math tutor that really touched the kids.
I brought my pencil.
How do I reach these kids?
Wow. Okay, so this album is some turn of the millennium wine rock, but it channels the youthful power of punk rock and the schlep rock-esque wowsy woo woo teenage angst. The singing is sort of not dead on, and it's kind of warbly and flat, but when they harmonize, it works. It's off pitch a lot of times, but it's pretty much pop punk in the way that they produced it. It's made to be digestible by a larger audience. So yeah, there's not a lot of it. The barrier to entry on this is a lot easier than if somebody's screaming just noise, unintelligible noise. It's upbeat, and it's upbeat in a way that the contemporaries in pop punk at the time would be. Hey, yo, it's a 33-minute album, so they don't really beat their music into the dirt. Like it doesn't. The album doesn't feel like it goes by super quickly. We've had a long time to listen to this album, and I've heard this album more times than I've heard this a lot. I'm probably not going to listen to it the same number of times again in my life. But it's the way that they write the songs, they don't beat stuff into the dirt. Things are done and wrapped up pretty easily. It also kind of sounds like it's fodder for young adult coming of age movies, or like a CW network TV series that really needs to punch home. It's got that feel, like not quite grown in a lab, because there are rough edges. It's not like super produced, because there are places where they could probably done another take. But that's part of what makes it work. Like, as somebody who listens to a lot of really poorly recorded music, this sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds really fun, but not too tight. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, I was a Vagrant Records kid, for sure.
Aww.
So this was.
Aw, you couldn't even be an Epitaph kid. Like,
When it came to my emo, I was a Vagrant Records kid. and this was in my wheelhouse for sure. So it's definitely a pair of rose-colored glasses when I'm coming back to this a little bit, and I can sort of recognize that. Like I said,
Rice are
there's
still on
three.
Vagrant. Holy crap!
So you're like
Really?
Bono?
Yeah.
Bono has. Sorry, I don't. I need a prop to do comedy. I'm sorry.
All right, Carrot Top. Because like I said, there are 3 albums that I think are. When I go to Saves the Day, I go to one of 3 albums. Through Being Cool was a little bit more punk rock, and then the one after this, In Rivery, was a bit more weird and out there. So this one to me slots right in the middle there in a weird way. The bass work to me is a lot of fun throughout this. It catches a groove here and there. It really is sort of that hollow bass tone that I'm a sucker for in pop punk. And also the lyrics itself. You can't talk about Saves the Day without talking about like Chris Connolly's like weird writing style. It's very imagery based a lot of times, and it's all forlorn melancholy, but it also gets into like weird, like almost violent imagery at times, like the angsty anger of
A lot
Chris
about
Connolly,
blood and
especially
hearts.
yeah,
And
Quite
it's
a
a
bit
lot
about
of
blood and hearts and
Coin
ripping out
slots.
my heart and cutting my heart and
Coin
One of
slots.
bleeding
my-
and
one of my
lots of hearts,
favorite
lots of blood.
turns of phrases for them was the it comes in this song about the gasoline and the forks. It just that weird imagery that comes along with that, which is sort of what Chris Conley is in when he writes songs for the most part. There's an album here or there that I don't know if we're going to talk about ever. But
Weird
God,
thing.
I hope.
Do
We could do it a lot of albums then.
is it just me, or do
Pick
I
those
remember
places.
there being like more than a few songs about car crashes in emo, or is there like only like 2? Like, trying to
no,
remember.
there's
No
a
thanks,
few. There's
guys. I've been
there's
through
Brain.
too many of my fair share of car crashes.
It's like that movie Crash, but not that one. The other one.
There's one on here. There's
There's a brand new, and then there's a
Car in the
Thursday
Water.
track.
There's brand new. There's a few. But that to me is part of the fun, is juxtaposing the sort of more fun, upbeat, like pop punky sort of song style with the sort of more sad or morose or melancholy sort of topics, that forlornness that they had, and that I think was what Vagrant Records, their bands in this era really did well. Your Get Up Kids, Your Saves the Days, and such like that, was making a catchy song, but also making it like sort of about like their like personal situations, and making those two things sort of work in tandem in a weird way, which I really enjoyed. Again, I'll talk about this a little more, I guess, in the closing statements, but I think it's Saves the Day to me is one of those things that if you don't find them at a certain time in your life, it's sort of like the Catcher in the Rye syndrome. It's, you got to find it at the certain point where like the themes of what's going on here hit you, and then like you can go back to it at any time and at least remind you of that. So
Yeah, in a way, yeah, definitely that. Deej, how would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this album musically as, it reminds me of quite a few of my melanin challenged friends in high school in the late 90s and early 2000s.
White people. You talk about white people.
Melanin deficient.
Yes.
Melanin deficient. It's 2018, Brett. Come on.
Caucasians.
That's
Be respectful,
technically
Republicans.
not broad
it's
enough.
it's current year. How can you talk like that, Brett?
Caucasian
I don't know.
is too specific.
Now, what I will say is that I listened to this album in my car, on my speakers, on my desktop, and with my headphones. And I will say that the mix of the album was extremely sonically pleasing. The bass, the guitar, the drums, and the vocals all sounded great when I listened to them all. Like, I absolutely loved how the bass sounded. I loved the snare drum. And just overall, as a sonic product, it is really, really good. But I would also say that mixing and mastering an album like this is probably really easy because there aren't a whole lot of dynamics on this album. Each song kind of jumps to the next. And I felt like when I was done with the whole album, it really just kind of flew by. And the songs, I was looking and listening for things that really would stick with me, and they really didn't. The vocals were, I would say, as a singer, what's his name? Charles Conley?
Chris Conley,
Chris Conley. He seems to have a fairly limited range as a vocalist, and he stayed in that area. And he knows what his vocal range is, and he doesn't deviate on it. His riffs are what they are. The songs he writes are what they are. They really just kind of bounce from one track to the next without much in terms of dynamics or things to really catch me off guard. So in that regard, it was a little on the dull side by the time the album was done. Like, it was less than 40 minutes, and it really felt almost like 30 minutes on the dot.
Mm-hmm. This is understandable. Yeah, like I think like Drew had alluded to, it does have a time and place of emotional thing, but it may not necessarily rock your world with its dynamics. Which it's one of those things where it's like it either hits you or it doesn't, and I think it definitely can understand how it's the lack of dynamics and how kind of it just kind of stays in one tone could.
What I wrote in my notes is that this is an album that was for someone who knows how to play guitar and needed to vent his emotions. Yeah. And I get that.
But you're talking about every teenager that I hung out with as a kid.
Which is a shame
we were just too young.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, so
hey, the 80s and early 90s had Braid and Texas is the reason and shit.
Yes.
Fuck it.
Yeah, I think but let's talk about some of the tracks either way. And let's talk about some of the kind of two key tracks. It does start off really solid with a fun track in their hit, as it were, At Your Funeral. It is a fun song to sing along to. It is a fun song that I think I enjoyed singing along to it.
With the power of a carload of women, Petey sings this on his way to work.
Hell yeah.
I mean, it's a sing song. It is a sing along song.
Yeah, and I think the music of it is fun and kind of really fun and motivating, kind of catchy and it'll have you bop in your head. Another track, Jukebox Breakdown. I love what kind of the fun bouncing that the guitar does, and with the little riff and the lyrics are fun and it's super catchy. And then I think the album closes out really well with Firefly. Yeah, I think it's a solid closing track that I think works as a really great bookend with At Your Funeral to kind of close it. It's not one of those albums where it's we're being cyclical. It has a really great bookends with their opening and closing track. But let's go to you guys. Brett, what will be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, At Your Funeral is the song from the car I was in. But there's a good reason that this is
what with car was in you was singing.
Yes. I was not whacking in that car, but
the trailer
I was being whacked upon. I was whacked upon.
I don't think I'm old enough for this podcast.
Hey, we were cruising through Broad Ripple Village in Indianapolis. It was a long time ago, but no, you can see why
I'm not
this
old
is
enough for this.
Cruising
Okay.
down Broad Ripple with your woes.
Okay. I'm,
Thanks, Petey, for laughing at that dumb trick.
but you can see why this is the lead track and off the album, and it's probably the best constructed song if you want to have something catchy. The thing that stood out to me were the bass lines. They did not have to be as good as they were. Like, trust me, they could just have hung out on the root and played, along with the power chords. A lot of times I look at Spotify and see what the play count is on a lot of songs when I'm kind of at a loss, because there's a lot of sameness between the songs on this album. There are a few parts of this album where it does change in tempo, but the second track, See You, I think it's not just getting numbers because it's the second song on the album and people quit the album like later in the album. So just like, in the batting order in baseball, the guy who hits second is going to hit more than the guy who's hitting in the 8th slot. It's numbers, it's math, it's how it works. But I think it really does stand up, and it's a standard oft-used punk rock progression, and it works. Because I struggled to get a third song, I'm losing. All I'm losing is me. I just wanted to bring up that there's lyrics that said, I think I see that big blade coming. I thought that they said, I think that I see the Beyblade coming. And I haven't thought about Beyblade.
Beyblade.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like, I can't.
It's a little early for Beyblades on this album.
It was prophetic.
You talk about Beyblades coming to chop. Beyblades, but it
was the year that it released in that the manga was released in the English language. It was the year. No, it was the year the anime started airing in Tokyo.
Let's get our tops and fight each other. Yeah, now I've ruined this song for everybody. Beyblade. Yes. Even I'm too old for that.
Yes.
I got a fidget spinner around here somewhere.
Oh God. I'm gonna start doing that.
Does it have Jeff Gerstmann's face on it?
No, it has a Cavs logo on it.
Aw.
I don't feel like getting up to do the Backpack Kid dance.
I'm doing it, but you can't see. I'm in a chair. It hurts. God. But
when a dance is more athletic,
hey, kids.
It is more coordination skill than it is dance.
It's not really a dance. It's like para.
Hey, lean back was a dance.
Oh, I miss para.
But at least lean back has some attitude and a personality to it.
Is that doing it like Bernie? I don't know my dances.
Oh, the Bernie. Oh,
see, the Bernie had some fun and some personality to it. The Back Kid dance.
I miss para and I miss the Bernie. I miss
the
all
Backpack
of
Kid
those.
dance has no personality to it.
Okay. I mean, it has a Backpack Kid.
Yeah. Has an influencer more than a personality attached to it. Drew. Speaking of influencers, Drew.
Oh yeah, super influential.
Yes. What would be some of the key tracks for you?
So I'm gonna start out like the Record Breakers thing, like the last of us have. At Your Funeral. It's the way it starts off, a little bit somber, but then kicks into this verse with this like kind of groovy bass lick to it, like this really neat sort of run. Lick in it is really nice. Again, to me though, it's weird like knowing where Chris Connolly like ended up, where there's a lot of rumors around his apparent like heavy drug use and psychedelics and all that. Weird.
Heavy drug use in music.
Whoa.
Weird. I know.
Shut the front door.
Also psychedelics in rock and roll music.
No.
I should send you Monkey sometime from the next album. It's a weird one. But hearing a song about a dude like, hey, I'm going to try to save you from drugs. And then like him very much probably using a lot of them later. It's kind of
so
weird
like
to me as
Alice
a
in
fan.
Chains. Yeah. Was Alice in Chains like their first 3 albums?
That is true. Yeah, it's fair.
And the Muppets.
I'm
not wrong.
Oh, you're.
Hey, I didn't say you were wrong. Just saying it was funny. The See You. This is the one, along with like Rock's Tonic Juice Magic, that I point to like the lyrics of, to sort of say like the weird way that Chris Connolly thinks about the emotions in the song. There's sadness to it, but there's also like that twinge of like anger, and the violent streak in a way, which kind of scares me, which might explain why there's a revolving door of musicians in this band. Just saying. Jukebox Breakdown is sort of a classic to me. This is like a junior high like sound for me on Full Display.
Oh wait, hold on. How old were these guys when the album was released? Were they like the
Chris
band was
Conley
formed in like
started
'94?
Yeah, Chris Conley when the band started was like I think 15 or 16.
Yeah, he was 21 at the time. 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
Well,
close
not
enough
too
to be
far
teenager.
removed.
Yeah,
Not too far removed from high school.
Yeah.
Like he was really young when he started the band, and he refuses to quit, even though like all of the founding members have long since left.
Yeah. They have one
Cheerio.
of those classic. Saves the Day has one of those classic membership charts where you get to see all the different broken bars.
the bar graph.
And then the one that goes all the way across.
Yeah, the one that goes all the way across. Yeah.
Real Big Fish has one of those as well.
The Salvation.
It's not just emo.
The Misfits.
The bass slides and As Your Ghost Takes Flight, I think, are memorable as well. As I said before this, I'm doing the Drew thing because fuck you guys. Nightingale.
Fuck you too.
Okay, what is the Drew thing for the new guy?
Sorry,
all the
Drew.
songs.
Please explain.
For the new guy.
The Drew thing is when this podcast first started, when there was a album I was particularly excited to bring or excited about listening to, I would pick like half of the album and just talk about the songs instead of trying to narrow it down to like 3 or 4. So I picked like a Nightingale. The way it does the like weird slow mid-tempo thing in the middle of this album is great. If you sort of liked where this was going, go to the next album because they do it and do it weirder. And then Firefly. I think finishing on Firefly is kind of perfect. If it's that like late 90s, early 2000s sort of pop punk sound to a T, it's like a chuggy, power chordy pop punk song, and it's simple and it works and it's fun. So.
David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I said earlier that I kind of struggled with standout tracks, but I do remember really enjoying the lyrics and just the overall melody to the song Cars and Calories. That song lyrically kind of stuck out to me. Grew up in East LA, watching Celebrities, kind of a pop culture thing, so I really appreciated those lyrics. That was the one that really stood out to me. The rest of the album, like I said, it really did kind of run together, a lot of it. And I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way, because I understand that this is an album of a certain vibe and a certain time and a certain moment. And if it strikes a chord with you, it strikes a chord with you. But for me, lyrically, this song kind of deviated from that vibe the most, Cars and Calories, and that's the one that stuck out in my mind lyrically.
Yeah, I think, and there's something to say about that song. It is a cool song, and it does offer a nice breather, from the vibe of the album.
Yeah, I almost brought that song up as well. It sort of stood out.
Yeah. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn to talk about some conclusive thoughts. Brett, how would you conclude about this album?
Well, I mean, you guys, if anybody's ever listened to my opinion on music of any kind, you know that I come to music for escapism and but most like that's not necessarily across the board. I even play the blues, so it's not even fair for me to say, oh, I don't like music that brings the emotion. But as a serial lyrics like ignorer, like I could still find some groove in this album. I found some stuff that I was probably too close-minded to get into at the time that it came out. I was too far up the ass of punk rock. That was even before my jazz days, which was even worse. Yeah, you think about my prejudices about music when I was a fucking punk rock kid. When I was playing bebop.
I want nothing more than jazz, Brett. I want that in my life yesterday.
There was 5 years of me being a good jazz guitarist, but yeah, I'm closeted though. I'm retired. But I might, yeah. But this ain't my thing. But I can realize how I can understand how it could be somebody's thing. Just like how when I was a kid and I found Bad Religion Suffer, and that was the thing that spoke to me. I can imagine that kids that actually listen to contemporary music from their youths could get into this.
Mm-hmm. Drew, how would you conclude on this album?
Like I said at the beginning, I understand that for this album and for much of this era of certain bands, there's a very rose colored glasses that I'm looking through. There is a certain level of nostalgia that I hit with these bands, but I still think that musically they're very, very interesting. Now, will the lyrics hit with you if you're, say, not a 14, 15, 16-year-old boy alone in his room? Probably
in
not.
2001, 2?
I would say some of these things could still be. Hey, Texas is the Reason was also still good when I was that age. So I think it carries over. But I think that lyrically some of the imagery still is cool. But that the music does still hold up if you're into like that era of pop punk in a way. And you haven't heard Saves the Day, definitely this would be an album to check out. But it's not breaking wildly new ground, just like the album I brought before wasn't wildly breaking new ground, but it's something that is fun if you're into that sort of thing, and is something that I still very much enjoy. I may have sung most of this while I listened to it in my car because I still remember the lyrics, even though I probably only listen to it like maybe once or twice a year now, but
yes.
Still love Saves the Day.
Yes. Yeah. Deej, David, how would you conclude on this album?
Brett called himself a serial lyrics ignorer. I personally consider myself a serial lyrics obsessor. So a lot of this was...
With our powers combined, we will both be disappointed.
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of it was kind of blunt and straightforward, and very, very ahead. There wasn't a lot of subtlety and a lot of creativity to a certain degree. The imagery is there, but it's kind of the same throughout. Musically, I think that it was very much of its time. And I don't fault it for that. I really have no problem with this. I just know that by the time I was around this age and I had friends that were listening to this, I had already discovered the likes of Opeth and DMX. So, well, these lyrics were a certain type of emotion. I was in a completely different place altogether. So I don't have any issue with this, but I just know for the time period, this was just not what I would have been into. And today it just felt kind of passable. Like it just kind of came and went.
Which is understandable. Yeah. I think there's a lot to like and a lot to enjoy about this, but definitely something that a lot of it comes from a time and place, which is that a time and place was early 2000s emo music, and that place was in the hearts of college age or high school age emo kids, like the ones at the northwest and south east corners of this quadrant. So definitely one of those things where it's not going to be a thing where it will grab everyone, but I think it's definitely worth checking out, worth listening to, to kind of like see what it was from that time. And I think I definitely, it is a little bit of a nostalgia thing for me. I don't usually indulge my nostalgia bone, like I've shared. I think it's one of those things where I share with David a little bit, where we don't overly nostalgize like most people on the internet. But this is one of those things where I let myself kind of like, this was a fun thing. Let me remember a certain time and place, and enjoy this album. I think overall it's just a fun album to listen to, especially if it was your album of that time. But that being said, fantastic saves the day, and say what you are. That being said, let's transition over to the main event of the evening. So what really matters, the grand finals of this endeavor. We have our haiku reviews. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haiku numero uno.
Yeah.
I understood that.
That's a language I can translate.
Yes.
Spanglinese.
Yes.
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 It's not poorly made. I'm cheesing out.
Yes.
It's not poorly made, but it ain't really my thing. It's emo as shit.
Yeah. Drew, what is your haiku?
Cannot help it. Absolutely love it. Cannot get enough.
Yes. David, what is your haiku?
Oh man, my first review haiku officially as a member of Record Breakers. I hope I get this. A band at one speed. High school 2002. It's forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
You did it. Yay.
Top notch. Nailed it. All right, my haiku. Catchy emo tunes. Brings me back to college days. And still a fun ride. Yeah, those are our thoughts on Saves the Day. Stay what you are. You can find that album on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Follow along at home on that Spotify playlist. Subscribe to it, and you can keep it updated. Get notified when it updates, when we add the songs. We try to do it on a fairly consistent level, but sometimes I slack. But I try to keep it updated.
Petey?
I do have a...
Petey?
Yes.
Slack is a messaging platform. It's not for music.
Yes.
Good brother. Petey?
Yes. So on that Spotify playlist,
if you need to tag in on a few of these things, I've produced a podcast or two in my day.
Yes.
Wait, you've done podcasts before?
Yes.
One or two.
Oh.
Yes. But yeah, on that Spotify playlist will be next week's record. So now that we had a chance, Deej, to review somebody else's album as a member of the show, now we're gonna put you on the spot. Have you pick an album. So Deej, what do you got for us next week?
Gentlemen, the album for next week will be Atrocity Exhibition, the 2016 output from Detroit-based rapper Danny Brown.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Don't think Patrick would have picked that one.
Yes. Diversity.
Oh man. Yes.
Diversity sounds.
I was expecting some sort of operatic metal, but
yes,
I'll take this.
There will be time for that. We've got.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I look forward to it.
Yes. But
wait, have I done Lace Up yet? Should I?
All right. So look forward to that next week. But that is next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Please Call Me DJM. Brett is at HibbyBird, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XJuiceForX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com is the email. You can still find Patrick at at the Swagger. Give him a shout out. Say how much you miss him.
Tell him that Record Breakers was way better before the new guy came in. You can do that. It's fine.
But yeah. Follow us along with Rebelli TV on YouTube and all the other places. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Do all the things. Subscribe, like, share. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Kinda don't care.